And welcome. Raise Your Inner Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you doing this week? I hope you're well. I hope you're holding up. Things are not getting any easier, that's for sure. The wild up and down weather has continued for us. Had a beautiful warm day earlier. Got the scooter out. That was great. But then a big storm came through, enough that the kids were home from school. And now today, getting warm again. Just crazy. Continues all the way down. Of course, plenty to talk about this week. Trump's disastrous meeting with Zelensky, the insane damage DOGE keeps doing, all the careless cuts, the latest blatant corruption, and that's only getting started, some impressive and hilarious pushback coming from other countries, some thoughts on managing our fitness and our weight, a health challenge for the week, and more new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what things gave me a lift this week, and what things were pulling me down? For my ups, I mentioned getting the scooter out. That was really just so great. I drove it around, used it for an actual errand, going to the store. I just love it. Cannot wait until that's my normal daily transportation. The one disappointment with it is that for some reason they don't want you to leave it plugged in all the time. Every other rechargeable battery system I've ever had, our car, our devices, literally everything, it's fine to keep them connected to a charger all the time. With the Tesla, it's even recommended. But for some reason, it's not good for the scooter. So I'm going to have to either remember to unplug it in the evening or put on a timer or something, like that. Obviously, it's a first world problem, not a huge thing, but it is a bother, sort of an annoyance that I wish weren't there. Overall, though, still super excited. I think I mentioned the new marketing training I'm working through, still enjoying that, feeling good about it. Seems genuinely next level from what I've done in the past, which gives me hope it will actually work. That would be great. Also just nice to be engaged like this again, as I mentioned. I met an interesting new person yesterday in the same business, basically, of helping people with their mental game. That was fun to connect and share notes. My work is quite solitary most of the time. I do not talk to many people in the course of a day. So it was just fun to connect. And now and then, that's a great thing. Probably the biggest thing this week is that I'm back on Noom again, the weight loss program. I know it's not the first time you've heard that, but that's the way that goes, right? So I'm back on. I started last Sunday. So far, so good. We'll talk more about that later. But that is also a down for the week because it's sort of depressing. I mean, overall, it's an up for sure. It feels good in so many ways. But it's also a lot of work, and it takes time, and you can't help but feel a little down knowing what's ahead and how it might not even work because it doesn't always, Anyway, more on that later. The song I'm working on now is beating me up a bit. I'm making some progress, but also having some moments where I'm not sure it's even going to work. Might have to just set it aside and move on. Sort of lost right now, truth be told. And that's all fine. I mean, it's still enjoyable. But it becomes a down because, and I've talked about this before, but it just takes over so much bandwidth and time. It just makes everything else feel a bit more rushed and behind. I have to be better about managing that. And of course, I will say, the continued Trump circus just keeps getting worse, right? I mean, the temperature keeps going up, and you start to feel like maybe something's going to break. Honestly, I can't see how it won't break at some point. It just has to. But you don't know what that looks like, which creates a lot of extra stress in our lives. So that's not great. Not a good feeling. But nothing to do but deal with it too, right? I mean, find our way forward. Can't turn away. That's not going to work. So that's what we're here for. You and I supporting each other and whatever it takes to keep moving forward and being the person we want to be. All right, those are my ups and downs for this week. Next up, top stories. It's starting to get a little hard to keep up, isn't it? I mean, looking back, the big news has to be Ukraine and that nightmare meeting between Trump and Zelensky. But that was like 5 days ago, and it somehow already feels like old news with everything else going on. It's just insane. I do want to start with one little good news item. Maybe just me, but I thought this was pretty great. The first ever private company to land on the moon happened this week. Actually, I'm not sure if they're the first or the second. seeing some conflicting stories on that. But anyway, a private company successfully landed on the moon. That's pretty amazing. And I know this can seem like, so what with all the trouble here on Earth, but I still think it's cool to think about a future where we actually accomplish things rather than tear them down, And the ability to go to space and the moon at a tiny fraction of what it used to cost just opens up a ton of interesting possibilities, and I think that's exciting. I still remember when the movie 2001 came out way back when, and I really thought we'd be living like that by now, and it was just the coolest thing to think about. Nowhere near there yet. Good chance I won't even see it myself, but it almost certainly is coming, and I think it's a good thing, just a little ray of light poking through the dark. Speaking of which, Ukraine, it's just shocking to realize, and people have been saying this for a while, but this made it so clear. We are on the side of Russia now. We are the bad guys. We are actively helping Russia defeat Ukraine, a free democracy, one of our allies, invaded by an authoritarian aggressor. We led the call to come together and help them defend themselves 3 years ago. Now we have switched sides and are working against our strategic partners in Europe and all around the world. It's like we flipped and joined Germany and Japan in the middle of World War II. You just can't believe it, except that it is 100% true. And where are the Republicans on this? They could stop it, but they are basically nowhere to be found. And there's no way they actually support this after all they've said and done over all these years. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, on video not that long ago, speaking forcefully about the importance of supporting Ukraine and our undying commitment to that. Now it's crickets. No pushback, no resignations, just a massive silence at every level for no purpose other than appeasing Trump. And be clear, there's no strategic vision behind this. Trump's not making a real case for it because there's no case to make. Everyone knows it's wrong and dangerous and an absolute catastrophe for the world. It's just that he likes Putin and autocrats, and he doesn't like Zelensky. So that's our policy. And Republicans just go along because he said so. This would never have happened with the old Republican Party, and certainly never with Democrats. But we don't actually have a Republican Party anymore. It's just children with chainsaws. One big Trump personality cult. That meeting was so offensive. This guy, Zelensky, fighting for his country's literal survival for 3 years. Massive devastation, massive loss of life. None of us can even imagine what they're going through. Thousands of children kidnapped and taken to Russia. Multiple plots on his own life by the Russians, and all of it completely unprovoked. So he wears military fatigues all the time to honor his people fighting for their freedom. And this wannabe journalist, this pasty-faced nothing of a person, who, by the way, is Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, that tells you a lot, this absolute poster boy of an unserious person, has the gall to ask Zelensky why he's not wearing a suit in the Oval Office. I've seen so many great comments from people all over the world about how truly, deeply offensive and harmful this was. I'm just mortified as an American. And it feels like a real tipping point in our relations with our allies, especially in Europe, allies in Europe. But then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Trump goes further. He suspends military aid, no more weapons from us for Ukraine. He suspends sharing intelligence with them. He's basically cutting them off, just leaving them there to die. I don't care. You're on your own now. And why? Because we are on Russia's side now. No one would have ever believed that was possible, but that's where we are. The only good thing I can think of that came from that meeting is that the rest of the world is now absolutely clear about the truth of it. Anyway, another new low for our so-called leader. The next big item is the ongoing damage being done by Elon Musk and DOGE. Speaking of children with chainsaws, a former head of Social Security sounded the alarm this week that cuts there are very likely to cause actual missed payments and system breakdown within 60 to 90 days. Can you imagine that? I mean, really? I don't believe Social Security has ever missed a payment to anyone, anywhere. This would be an explosive event. And this one's a little personal because I got my first payment last month. But this is all on Trump and Musk and DOGE. Russian and Chinese intelligence services are targeting disgruntled federal employees for spying. That seems like a pretty smart play on their part, right? Not so great for us, but totally foreseeable. Massive cuts to NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric, that is, the Weather Service. Why do you cut that? Don't we need accurate weather forecasts for all kinds of things? Strategically, commercially, everything? Yes, we do. It's just stupid. Massive cuts to the VA, like 50% of the staff potentially. Tens of thousands of employees there. Has the VA ever been accused of providing too many services to veterans? Not that I've heard. Who does that help? How can they think that's a good idea? Massive cuts at the IRS. And this truly is a head-scratcher, given the DOGE mission to make government more efficient. This, cuts at the IRS, will literally cost the government money, tens of billions of dollars. How is that efficient? The only way you make sense of that is you just want to help rich people, typical Trump, and you're doing it under the false guise of efficiency. I mean, you just can't get that one. A USAID whistleblower estimates DOGE's cuts will lead to 18 million more malaria cases around the world, 166,000 extra deaths from that, 200,000 children paralyzed by polio who wouldn't otherwise have been, 1 million children not getting treatment for severe malnourishment, very likely to die. I mean, it's just cruel and senseless and dangerous everywhere. I guess, though, not a surprise when you hear Elon Musk saying this week, and not joking, quote, "The primary weakness of Western civilization is empathy," end quote. Think about that. Nothing they're doing is a surprise when you understand that they believe that, and how completely unfit it makes him, and all of them really, to be in this kind of position. Think of the damage their lack of empathy is doing to these people around the world and to our reputation as a country. They'll never forget that, how the richest country in the world and the richest man in the world just cut them loose and let them die. Makes you sick to think about it. But there's still more. Oh, my goodness. The whole tariffs thing. What's he even doing? Who has any idea? They're on, they're off. It doesn't seem like even he knows from one day to the next. It's just so all over the map. What is the point of that? He had Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, shut down the group that tracks and counters Russian cyber attacks on the U.S. and election interference. Why would you shut that down? I mean, really, whose side are you on? Who does that help? Trump got Romania to release Andrew Tate. Just, if you don't know, just the worst kind of toxic, asshole, fake masculinity bro. He was being held there for rape and human trafficking. He's back in the U.S. now. Trump pressured him to let him go, let him come back home. Why do that? Who does that help? He posthumously, this was a really interesting little thing, he posthumously pardoned Pete Rose, famous baseball player, great player, but also was caught betting on baseball, banned from the sport, convicted felon for tax fraud, long since passed, pardoned him. Why? What message does that send? It really does seem like Trump genuinely believes that any white guy should just not be held accountable for breaking the law. This is fun, isn't it? Oh, my goodness. On the corruption watch, people are now offered the chance to pay $5 million for a private dinner with Trump while he's in office. Supposedly, the money goes to his presidential library fund. Whatever you say about that, how is that not just pure corruption? What am I missing here? Starlink, Elon's other company, great product, but now getting a $2.4 billion contract to upgrade air traffic control communications. That's fine, but oops, Verizon already had the contract. Somehow Starlink jumped in there and snatched it away. I wonder how that happened. The Securities and Exchange Commission dropped charges against a Chinese billionaire who just happened to have recently put $30 million into Trump's cryptocurrency. Oh, okay, give us $30 million, we'll drop the case. Right out in the open. Pure corruption. For our crazy and craven of the week, first one is Trump. This is probably more stupid than crazy, but it's a fine line with this guy. State of the Union address, massive audience. Trump gets a big laugh, saying they discovered and cut a program that was spending $8 million to make mice transgender. Oh, how hilarious. What a waste. Thank you, great leader, for fixing this injustice. But of course, it wasn't true. I mean, who would do that? Really, you think that's likely, a program like that? No. What was really happening is that labs were doing medical research for humans, of course, cancer research, etc., using transgenic mice, not transgender, transgenic, which is when mice have the DNA from other species combined with theirs, so they can be used to study all kinds of things, right? Not just those that affect mice. So it looks like DOGE's obsession with all things trans got them to make a pretty dumb mistake here. And then Trump, of course, claimed it as a fact to the whole world, just like that thing with Springfield and they're eating the dogs and cats. What they really need to do is put some Trump DNA into those transgenic mice so they can study having a complete lack of shame and self-awareness, because that is a seriously deadly disease. And then, of course, speaking of no shame, all the Republicans in that State of the Union address, just emperor's new clothes all the way down. Great leader, best leader, love the leader, so funny, so right about everything. It's just sad and sickening. Is it possible they really believe all that? What do their wives and their husbands and kids think? How can they not be ashamed of the people they become? It just doesn't seem possible. But here we are. Thank you, Republicans. On the plus side, the pushback is getting more and more substantial. Unfortunately, most of it's happening outside of our country, but it's still pretty great. Here's my favorite. You are going to love this one. You might want to write this down. It's so good. A restaurant in Canada is advertising a Trump sandwich, which is white bread full of bologna with Russian dressing and a small pickle. Oh, that is so good, right? White bread full of bologna, Russian dressing, small pickle. You have to love that. J.D. Vance had to get short a ski trip after the Zelensky meeting because of protesters. More serious, a Norwegian firm, that's hard for me to say, a Norwegian firm is no longer refusing to refuel U.S. Navy ships at their port in Norway. That's a big deal. You think about that. The German president said, I would never have believed we would have to defend Ukraine from the United States, but we do. Oof. Also, a lot to think about there. A French senator made just a blistering speech. I'll link to it. But among other things, he said, quote, Washington has become Nero's court with an incendiary emperor, submissive courtiers, and a jester high on ketamine, wonder who he's talking about there, in charge of purging the civil service. We were at war with a dictator. We are now at war with a dictator backed by a traitor, end quote. Man, right? Would love to hear more clarity like that here in our country. Anyway, lots of really bad things happening, but some good things building in response to. Don't lose hope. All right, that's top stories this week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week we talked about the Zen saying, be master of mind rather than mastered by mind. That genius statement of the goal of mental game training and peace of mind is so good. This week I want to revisit the quote from Leo Tolstoy. at the end of the Raise Your Inner Game book. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. I mentioned earlier, I met a new person this week in the mental game training business. We're also both lovers of pickleball, so that was a fun call. But he was talking about his work just in general, and he said, bottom line, I'm really just about doing the best I can to put positive energy out into the world. You got to love that. I mean, I suppose you could debate whether it's the best business strategy if you want, but I really like the reminder that when you get right down to it, that's all we can do. That's all the actual meaning and purpose available to us, and it's great. It's to make a positive difference in other people's lives. You've heard me talk about this before, probably. I don't need to repeat the whole case here. But I just thought it was a good reminder that it's a way to stay grounded and sane in all the crazy. As long as we can keep doing that, we're doing something important and that feels good. It's also a reminder of the America we want to get back to. This is what our country is supposed to be about, right? Everyone's welcome. Everyone has an equal opportunity. We're all in it together. But of course, this administration is literally the opposite of that. They're not about serving humanity. They're only about serving themselves. All the rest of you out there, too bad. Never mind, you're on your own. Fight amongst yourselves. That's funny. Anyway, that's Inner Game Gold this week. Leo Tolstoy dropping some powerful, fundamental truth. The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity. Next up, raise your outer game. This week, let's talk about our health and specifically weight management. And not just weight loss, but how to get where you want it and keep it where you want it. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know that I use the Noom app for this, Noom, N-O-O-M, and I am back in an active Noom phase again, which means I wasn't using it for a while, which means I need to lose a few pounds again. So right there in that comment is one big point. If it really worked, you might say, I wouldn't be gaining weight, right? Actually, no, that's not really true. In fact, it's my favorite thing about the Noom program. The system works for whatever you want it to do. When you want to lose weight, you set your daily goal to that level. When you hit your goal weight, you increase your daily goal to maintain your weight. And in both modes, you're free to eat whatever you want. You just have to track how many calories you're eating and stay within your daily goal. And one more killer feature, your daily goal changes day to day depending on your activity for that day. And you get half of every calorie you burn. So if you have an activity monitor of some kind, I have an Apple Watch and the Oura Ring, and you play pickleball, for example, for an hour or two, pickleball burns around 500 calories an hour, which is great. So you play for 90 minutes, you burn 700 calories, you add 350 calories to your daily limit, which is a lot. So anyway, I think it's a great system. So why do I need to lose a few pounds? Because I stopped using it for a few months and my appetite got away from me. It's that simple. I got off it around the holidays. It's never a good idea for me to try to watch my calories over big holidays like that, right? It just doesn't work. Also takes the fun out of it. I also got off my exercise routine with the heart procedure. Most important, I have a powerful craving for desserts and fatty, salty snacks. When I'm using the app, it's not that hard to resist those, knowing how many calories they have and that I'm going to have to enter them into the app. That's enough to keep me from slipping. But as soon as I stop, all bets are off. I just cannot consistently control those appetites on my own. It's pretty amazing to observe, actually. Honestly, I know this sounds crazy and makes no real sense, but I would take Ozempic in a minute just to be free from those appetites. That would be such an improvement in my daily experience. I talk in the Raise Your Inner Game materials about lower level triggers, things that pull you down, control your behaviors, your thoughts, all that stuff, and how it's super smart to remove those from your life when you can. This is honestly probably my number one lower level trigger and struggle. It's a constant daily battle and has been for as long as I can remember. Just imagine how great it would be to be free of that. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. It's not realistic. I wouldn't qualify. I couldn't justify the cost. It would mostly seem silly, and I'm not even 100% convinced it's safe, so never mind, at least for now. In the meantime, I'll keep using Noom and try to be more consistent with it, or at least be better about getting back on it when I need to be off for a while for whatever reason. The biggest difficulty with it, if you're wondering, is the hassle of entering your meals. And they do as good a job of this as I can imagine anyone doing. It's just hard to figure out what you're eating. And sort of a bother to keep entering everything every day. You just get tired of it, or at least I do. Sort of ironic. It would be a lot easier if I didn't eat as healthy as I do. If I ate commercially available meals, even fast food, it's easy to figure out the calories in those. They have a massive database of all kinds of foods, and everything available commercially is in there. So again, easy to do that. It's home-cooked meals that get more tricky. Although, I mean, you get better at it over time, but it's part of the load. Also, of course, it should be said, it's hard to lose weight. It just is. To be in a mode, a physical mode, where you're consistently taking in less than you need for weeks or months at a time, it's just hard, physically and emotionally. Your brain's telling you, something's wrong here, we're in danger, and sometimes you just don't feel up dealing with that. But once you get down to your weight, it's a lot easier to keep going, right? You're not struggling with the hunger factor anymore. You're taking in what you need. At that point, it's just a hassle factor. And like happened with me, taking a break for a trip or the holidays and not getting back on it quickly enough. Anyway, that's a lot of blah, blah, blah. I am back on the Noom train again, shooting for 10 or 12 pounds total, which should take about 2 months. I tend to lose about 1.5 pounds a week. I have no big known events standing in the way, no holidays or trips. Pickleball starts up again next week. If all goes well, that helps a lot. So feeling cautiously optimistic, happy to have you join me as well, if now is the time for you to do something like that. And by the way, I've talked a lot about what makes it difficult, but it's also true that I feel better almost immediately when I get back on track, and in every way. My gut feels better, my energy is better, my self-control in all areas is better, and I feel better about myself. So bottom line, it's a great, great thing. It's also just a bit of work. Anyway, Noom, back on track. Join me if you'd like. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, I don't need you to start up a Noom program, which is probably what you're thinking I was going to do, though I do highly recommend it if you're looking for something like that. What I do suggest is to take an inventory of your current diet and exercise life and just see if there's something there you'd like to change and or improve. If you could stand to lose a few pounds, make note of that. Think about what you might do about it. What kind of approach might work for you? What have you tried? What might you do differently this time? What steps can you take to get started? If you could use more physical strength and stamina and that sort of thing, maybe you could start a strength training program. What might that look like? I went to a local gym, worked with a trainer just a couple of times, put together a program I could do on my own. I've been going to the gym a couple times a week ever since, and that's been night and day for me. It's like 20 years younger strength-wise. If you could use more cardio, what might that look like? Maybe start out walking regularly. I'll tell you, that's just a genius thing to do and so easy to overlook. Just walk for 30 minutes. It's fantastic. Maybe you want to take up pickleball. It's a great fun way to get a good workout. For all these areas, there are all kinds of things you could do. The important thing is to give it a clear look and come up with a practical plan for moving forward, or break it down, baby steps, just get started. So let's do that this week. Physical health inventory, weight, strength, cardio. See what you come up with. All right, next up, highly recommended. First, I want to mention again that speech from the French senator. It is thrilling. It really is. There's a link in the notes. Highly recommend you check that out. I've started a new book. Actually, I started a couple weeks ago, but I didn't say much about it. I'm far enough in now to at least say something about it. It's called Alien Clay. Author is Adrian Tchaikovsky. That's an interesting name, Tchaikovsky. science fiction. It's pretty weird, far into the future, sort of dystopian. Main character is very sarcastic and verbose, so he does a lot of talking, maybe more than I would prefer, ideally. But it's pretty funny, though also pretty dark. I can't really tell where it's going, which is a good thing in this case. I'm about a quarter of the way in, interested to see where it goes. Started a new show on Netflix, 0 Day with Robert De Niro. You have to check it out just for him, don't you? It's a political thriller. There was a big cyber attack on the U.S. Who did it? Was it an inside job? All that. Honestly, not sure about that one yet. The reviews, not super great. First episode was actually good. Second, not quite as good. It's super easy to be cliched and obvious with this genre. So we'll have to see how this shakes out. I'll keep you posted on that. And that is it for this week's show. Reminder, Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy. If you're an athlete or the parent of an athlete, it's perfect for you and it's guaranteed. Check out raiseyourinnergame.com to learn more about that. All right. I hope you have a great week. Let me know any questions. Otherwise, keep up the good work. I'll see you next week.